Life has a way of teaching you that appearances can be deceiving. Take my sister-in-law Olivia, for instance. With her perfect blonde hair, designer clothes, and carefully curated social media presence, she seemed like the epitome of class and sophistication. But I learned the hard way that the most polished exterior often hides the ugliest truths. I wasn't born into the world of country club memberships and charity galas that my husband's family inhabited. My parents were hardworking immigrants who ran a small restaurant in the heart of the city. They taught me the value of honest work and genuine relationships, lessons that seemed lost on my in-laws, especially Olivia. "Lisa, darling," Olivia would say, drawing out each syllable of my name like it was something distasteful. "You really should let me teach you proper American etiquette sometime." She'd been making these little digs since the day Michael, my husband, first introduced me to his family 3 years ago. I usually let her comments slide off my back. After all, I had Michael's love and support, a successful career as a pediatric nurse, and the quiet confidence that came from knowing who I really was. But something about tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way she kept whispering to her mother, Margaret, both of them shooting glances at me across the expansive dining room table. Or perhaps it was the mysterious smile playing on her lips, the kind that always preceded her worst behavior. The occasion was supposed to be a celebration. Michael had just been promoted to senior partner at his law firm. The entire family had gathered at his parents' Victorian mansion for what should have been a joyous dinner. The table was set with the finest china, crystal glasses catching the light from the antique chandelier above. Everyone was dressed formally, as Margaret insisted for every family gathering. "So, Michael," Olivia's husband Tom asked, swirling his wine glass, "how does it feel to be the youngest senior partner in the firm's history?" Michael squeezed my hand under the table, his face glowing with pride. "It feels incredible. Though I couldn't have done it without Lisa's support. She's been my rock through all the late nights and weekend work." I felt my cheeks warm at his praise, but Olivia's sharp laugh cut through the moment like a knife. "Oh please," she rolled her eyes. "All Lisa had to do was stay out of the way. It's not like she contributed anything to your success." "Olivia," Michael warned, his voice taking on an edge I rarely heard. But she wasn't finished. With deliberate slowness, she reached into her designer handbag and pulled out something that made my stomach drop. A plastic toddler fork decorated with cartoon characters. "I got you a little present, Lisa," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Since you seem to have such trouble with proper utensils." She slid the fork across the table toward me, her perfect manicure catching the light. "I noticed at last week's dinner how you held your fork. So ethnic." The table fell silent. Margaret covered her mouth to hide what I suspected was a smile, while her husband buried his face in his wine glass. Tom looked uncomfortable but said nothing as usual. "What's that supposed to mean?" Michael demanded, his face flushing with anger. "Oh, you know what I mean," Olivia continued, gaining momentum from the attention. "The way she scoots her food, how she sometimes uses her bread to help push things onto her fork. It's just so primitive. I thought this might help her learn proper table manners. They even have little grips to help developing motor skills." My hands trembled slightly under the table, but years of dealing with difficult patients and their families had taught me to maintain my composure. I reached for the plastic fork, picking it up with deliberate grace. "Thank you, Olivia," I said, my voice steady and clear. "It's thoughtful of you to be so concerned about my dining habits. Almost as thoughtful as those late-night messages you've been sending to Richard." The change in her expression was instantaneous. The smug smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure panic. Richard was Michael's boss, the managing partner of the law firm, and I had accidentally discovered something I wasn't supposed to know. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her perfectly painted lips trembling slightly. "Don't you?" I turned the fork over in my hands, examining it with exaggerated interest. It's funny how things work out sometimes. Last week, when I was bringing Michael dinner at the office, I happened to see some very interesting messages pop up on Richard's computer screen. He'd left it open while stepping out for coffee. Michael looked between us, confusion evident on his face. "Lisa, what's going on?" "Nothing," Olivia practically shouted, her voice an octave higher than usual. "She's making things up. She's just trying to deflect from her own embarrassing behavior." But I could see the fear in her eyes. She knew exactly what I had seen. The long string of flirtatious messages, the late-night meeting requests, the inappropriate photos, all sent from a woman who constantly preached about class and proper behavior. "Would you like me to be more specific?" I asked quietly, still turning the plastic fork in my hands. "Perhaps about the messages you sent last Tuesday, or the photos from Friday night?" The crystal glass in Olivia's hand shook so violently that red wine sloshed over the rim, staining the pristine white tablecloth. Tom's head snapped toward his wife, his expression darkening. "What photos?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Margaret attempted to salvage the situation, her society manners kicking in. "Perhaps we should serve dessert," she suggested brightly, half rising from her chair. "No, Mother," Michael said firmly, his eyes fixed on his sister. "I think we need to hear exactly what Lisa is talking about." The plastic fork suddenly felt very heavy in my hand. I had never intended to expose Olivia's secret this way, but years of her subtle cruelty and tonight's deliberate humiliation had pushed me to my breaking point. Sometimes the only way to deal with a bully is to stand your ground. "Well," I said, carefully placing the toddler fork back on the table, "since we're all so concerned about proper behavior tonight, maybe we should discuss what constitutes appropriate communication between a married woman and her brother's boss." The grandfather clock in the corner ticked loudly in the silence that followed, counting down the seconds until everything would change. Olivia's perfect facade was about to crumble, and we all knew it. The silence in the dining room was shattered by the sound of Olivia's fork clattering against her plate. Her perfectly manicured hands were shaking as she reached for her wine glass, nearly knocking it over in the process. "I don't know what you think you saw," she said, her voice trembling, "but you're clearly misinterpreting things. Richard and I occasionally discuss charity events for the firm. That's all." I pulled out my phone, keeping my movements deliberately slow. "Charity events? Is that what you call the messages where you asked him to meet you at the Riverside Hotel last Friday? Or the ones where you complained about Tom being too boring and not ambitious enough?" Tom's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "What is she talking about, Olivia?" "Nothing." Olivia snapped, but her composure was cracking. "She's lying. She's always been jealous of me, of our family's position. This is probably some pathetic attempt to—" "I have screenshots," I interrupted quietly. The color drained from Olivia's face so quickly I thought she might faint. Margaret, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly found her voice. "Now, Lisa," she said, using the same condescending tone she perfected over years of social climbing. "Whatever grievances you have with Olivia, bringing up such accusations at a family dinner is terribly uncouth. Perhaps this is why we've had such difficulty teaching you proper society manners." Michael's hand tightened around mine under the table. "Mother," he said, his voice tight with anger, "if you're suggesting that Lisa's background has anything to do with this—" "Of course that's what she's suggesting," I cut in, feeling strangely calm. "It's always been about my background, hasn't it? The way I speak, the way I eat, the way I dress. Nothing I do will ever be good enough for you or Olivia." I turned to face my sister-in-law directly. "But here's the difference between us, Olivia. I might not have grown up in your world of country clubs and cotillions, but I know who I am. I don't need to chase other women's husbands or send inappropriate pictures to my brother's boss to feel important." "You bitch," Olivia shrieked, jumping to her feet. "You had no right to look at those messages." The room froze. In her rage, she had just confirmed everything. Tom stood up so abruptly, his chair fell backward with a crash. "So it's true? You've been messaging Richard behind my back." "Tom, darling, please." Olivia's voice had taken on a desperate edge. "It's not what you think. Lisa is twisting everything." "Show me," Michael said quietly, looking at me. "Show me the screenshots." With trembling fingers, I pulled up the photos I had taken of Richard's computer screen. I hadn't wanted to expose Olivia this way, but her cruelty tonight had pushed me too far. I handed my phone to Michael. As he scrolled through the messages, his face hardened. Without a word, he passed the phone to Tom, who looked like he'd been punched in the gut as he read. 6 months, he whispered. "You've been doing this for 6 months? I can explain everything," Olivia pleaded, tears now streaming down her face, smearing her perfect makeup. "Richard means nothing to me. It was just what?" Tom demanded. "Just a bit of fun. Just a way to advance your social climbing. Do you know what this could do to my reputation? To my business?" Margaret tried to intervene again. Perhaps we should all calm down and discuss this privately. After all, family matters should stay within the family." "Family?" I couldn't help but laugh. "That's rich coming from you, Margaret. For 3 years, you've made it clear that I'm not really family. I'm just the immigrant who somehow trapped your precious son." "Well, if you had ever made an effort to fit in properly," Margaret began, but Michael cut her off. "Stop it, Mother. Just stop." He stood up, his face set with determination. "I've watched you and Olivia belittle and undermine Lisa since the day I brought her home. I've tried to keep the peace, to maintain family harmony, but I'm done. The way you've treated my wife is inexcusable." Olivia, seeing her world crumbling around her, made one last desperate attempt to regain control. "At least I didn't have to seduce my way into this family," she spat at me. "We all know the only reason Michael married you was because..." The rest of her sentence was cut off by the sound of Tom's hands slamming on the table. "Enough," he roared. "For once in your life, Olivia, just stop talking." He turned to Michael. "I'm sorry, but I need to deal with this. Congratulations on your promotion." Then he looked at me, his eyes full of pain and something that might have been respect. "Thank you for telling me the truth, Lisa. Someone had to." As Tom strode out of the dining room, Olivia trailing behind him in tears, I realized that the perfect family dinner had transformed into something else entirely. The carefully maintained facade of the perfect family had finally cracked, revealing the ugly truth beneath. But somehow, I felt lighter than I had in years. 3 months have passed since that explosive family dinner, and it's amazing how much can change in such a short time. The aftermath wasn't pretty, but sometimes you need to tear everything down to build something better. Tom filed for divorce within a week of discovering Olivia's messages. The scandal couldn't be contained, especially after Richard's wife found out and created a scene at the country club. Margaret tried desperately to salvage her daughter's reputation, spreading stories about Richard being the aggressor and Olivia being an innocent victim, but the screenshots told a different story. "You know what the ironic part is?" Michael said to me one evening as we sat on our porch swing, sharing a bottle of wine. "If Olivia hadn't been so focused on criticizing you all these years, she might have noticed that Richard's wife volunteers at the same hospital where you work. The same wife who now has copies of all those messages." I leaned my head against his shoulder, remembering how Sandra, Richard's wife, had approached me at work the week after everything exploded. Instead of the confrontation I'd expected, she hugged me and thanked me for bringing the truth to light. "Sometimes the universe has its own way of serving justice," I replied, thinking about how Olivia's carefully constructed world had unraveled. She'd moved out of her and Tom's mansion and into a modest downtown apartment, one that probably cost more than most people's houses, but was still a significant step down from her previous lifestyle. The family dynamics shifted dramatically too. Margaret, perhaps finally realizing that her perfect daughter wasn't so perfect after all, made an unexpected visit to our house one Sunday afternoon. "Lisa," she'd said, standing awkwardly in our kitchen, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. I owe you an apology." The words seemed to physically pain her, but she continued. "The way I've treated you, the things I've said and allowed Olivia to say, they were wrong. I was wrong." I studied her face, searching for the usual signs of manipulation or insincerity, but found only genuine remorse. "What changed?" I asked. "Everything," she admitted, sinking into one of our kitchen chairs. Watching Olivia's life fall apart, seeing how she'd been behaving, it made me realize that perhaps I hadn't done such a wonderful job raising her after all. All those society rules, the emphasis on appearances, what good did it do? My daughter is divorced and disgraced, while you, she gestured around our cozy kitchen, you built a real life. A good life. Without any of those rules I thought were so important. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. Since then, Margaret has been making genuine efforts to change. She even asked me to teach her how to make my mother's dumplings, though her first attempt looked more like abstract art than food. As for Michael's law firm, Richard quietly resigned after the scandal broke. Michael was worried his promotion might be affected by the drama, but instead, the managing partners were impressed by how he handled the situation. "Integrity matters more than family connections," the senior partner told him during a private meeting. "The biggest change, though, has been in me." That night at the dinner table, when I finally stood up to Olivia and her cruelty, something shifted inside me. the constant need to prove myself worthy of Michael's family, to fit into their world, it just evaporated. Last week, we hosted a family dinner of our own. My parents were there, filling our home with the smell of authentic cooking and the sound of hearty laughter. Margaret came too, attempting to use chopsticks with endearing clumsiness. Even Tom stopped by briefly, bringing his kids, who excitedly showed me the origami cranes my mother had taught them to make during their last visit. Olivia wasn't there, of course. Last I heard, she'd moved to another city for a fresh start. Sometimes I think about her and that plastic toddler fork she gave me. I keep it in a drawer as a reminder that standing up for yourself isn't just about defending your own dignity. Sometimes it's about exposing the truth that needs to come to light. "What are you thinking about?" Michael asked, bringing me back to the present moment on our porch swing. I smiled, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Just about how life has a way of putting people in their place, and how sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about living well. He pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple. "You know what I love most about you? Your capacity for grace. Even after everything they put you through, you still gave my mother a chance to make things right." "Well," I laughed, "I did expose your sister's secret messages first. Let's not paint me as a complete saint." "True," he chuckled, "but you did it with style." As we sat there, watching night fall over our peaceful neighborhood, I thought about how sometimes the hardest moments in life lead us exactly where we need to be. Olivia's cruelty had finally freed me from the need to fit into her world. In trying to shame me with that childish fork, she had instead forced everyone to face the truth. About her, about our family, and about the real meaning of class and dignity. And that, as it turns out, was the best gift she could have given me.